In southern Oregon, there's a lake that looks like someone turned the saturation too high and forgot to turn it back down. Crater Lake. A perfectly still surface inside a ring of cliffs, so intensely blue it feels edited, impossibly blue. Like the Earth is showing you a color it doesn't normally allow. And when the wind stops and the water becomes glass, the question isn't why is it pretty? The question is why it looks unnatural, like it's hiding something beneath that calm. Crater Lake sits inside a volcanic caldera, the scar of a mountain that destroyed itself. Long ago, Mount Mazama erupted and collapsed inward, leaving a vast bowl of rock where a peak used to be. Over time, rain and snow filled that empty space until it became a lake with no rivers feeding it and no streams flowing out. That alone should feel wrong. A lake that survives without an obvious lifeline. A lake held in place by cliffs like a locked room. The landscape around it doesn't feel like a shoreline. It feels like the rim of something sealed. For its clarity, there's so little for its clarity. There's so little sediment and so few nutrients compared to many lakes that the water stays unusually clean. Clean water doesn't scatter all colors equally. It allows sunlight to penetrate deep. And as light travels through water, the red end of the spectrum is absorbed more quickly than the blue. What comes back to your eyes is the color that survives the journey. Blue, sharpened by depth and purity. That's the first shock. The color is not paint on the surface. It's light being filtered by a massive column of water. Then comes the second shock. The lake is deep, nearly 2,000 feet in places, so the blue isn't just surface level. It has weight. It looks like a void wearing a beautiful mask. The caldera walls drop steeply into the water, and from the rim, the lake can feel less like a lake and more like an opening. On calm days, the surface reflects the sky so perfectly you can't tell where air ends and water begins. And inside that blue, there's an island, Wizard Island, an eruption that happened after the collapse. A volcanic cone rising from the lake like a reminder that the story didn't end when the mountain fell. The third shock is how self-contained it is. Crater Lake has no major rivers flowing into it and no normal outlet flowing out. It's fed mainly by snowfall and rainfall, and it loses water through evaporation and seepage through the porous volcanic rock. That balance is what keeps it alive, like a breathing system, taking in winter and exhaling through summer heat. The fourth shock is how fast the mood can change. 1 hour, it's a serene blue mirror. The next, wind arrives and the surface turns dark and restless, the color deepening until it looks almost black in the troughs. The lake doesn't stay one shade. It shifts like a pupil reacting to light. If you stand on the rim long enough, you start to notice the lake's silence has a pressure to it. The cliffs don't slope gently. They hold the water like a wall. The air up there can feel thin and cold, even when the sun is bright. Snow can linger late into the year, and in winter, the rim becomes a storm world, white, loud, and violent, while the lake below remains a single dark eye. That contrast is the fifth shock. A place can look calm and still be hostile. Not because it wants to hurt you, but because it doesn't adjust itself to your comfort. It holds its shape and expects you to adapt. So, here's the question that resets the entire mystery. If this lake has no rivers feeding it and no stream draining it, why doesn't it turn stagnant, muddy, or lifeless? The answer is what makes Crater Lake feel almost engineered. With little incoming sediment, the water stays clear. With relatively low nutrients compared to many lakes, algae blooms are limited, so the water doesn't easily shift toward murky green. And because the lake is deep and cold for much of the year, its chemistry and temperature tend to stay stable compared to shallow bodies of water. What looks like magic is a strict set of conditions holding the illusion together: clarity, depth, and a controlled environment. But the lake is not a frozen postcard. Beneath the surface, the caldera walls continue downward into darkness, and the lake sits inside volcanic rock that still tells its story in textures, layers, and hidden features. The bottom is not a flat basin. It's shaped by eruptions, collapses, and deposits that happened underwater after the caldera formed. And that's the part most people miss. Crater Lake is not just water in a hole. It's a record of destruction filled with something that looks pure. The beauty comes from the same forces that created the scar. And that's why the blue can feel eerie. The more you understand it, the more it feels like the lake is performing a trick with physics. Light vanishing into depth, red dying first, blue returning like a signal. It's the kind of place where your eyes insist you're seeing something artificial, while your brain knows it's only natural, because conditions are so extreme they look impossible. You begin to sense how fragile that perfection is. A shift in clarity, a change in the balance of nutrients, a disturbance in the system, and the color would change. The lake's beauty is not guaranteed. It's maintained by a quiet stability that can be broken. Impact on modern life shows up in what Crater Lake represents and how it's used. It's a living benchmark for water clarity and lake ecology, studied because its conditions help scientists understand how deep lakes behave, how climate patterns affect snowfall and evaporation, and how sensitive clean systems are to change. It's also a cultural magnet. Photos of that blue pull millions of people toward the rim, shaping tourism, conservation decisions, and how parks manage fragile landscapes under heavy attention. In a world where real or not, visuals spread faster than facts, Crater Lake becomes proof that nature can generate images that look edited, and that makes it both a scientific reference point and a modern obsession. If that impossible blue made you doubt your own eyes, like this video and subscribe to Off the Map. And don't leave yet, because the next episode takes you from a lake that holds stillness like a secret to a landscape that refuses to sit still at all. Next, Great Sand Dunes, Colorado. Why are these dunes so tall? When you see mountains of sand rising where they shouldn't exist, you'll realize the strangest places aren't always hidden in darkness. Sometimes they grow in full sunlight, right in front of you.